move forward.
Thank you. So thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. As you know, this webinar is about the Mendocino County LEAP Local Equity Entrepreneur Program, which we call LEAP. This webinar will talk both about the eligibility application as well as the grant application. In terms of our agenda, we'll walk through the team that's supporting you in these efforts. We'll provide a program, Kristen will provide a program overview, and then the Elevate Impact team will provide an overview of the LEAP program and the application process, as well as the grant program and the application process. Kristen, I'll hand it back to you.
All right, thank you so much for that. So hello everyone, thanks for joining us today. My name is Kristen Nevedal. I'm the Cannabis Program Manager for the County of Mendocino. And in the Cannabis Program, we regulate the cultivation and nursery operations in the unincorporated area of the county. I also want to just kind of give folks an overview about how to participate in today's webinar. We'll spend some time going through slides. We'll introduce you to each of the team members as everyone plays a role in this presentation going forward. And then we'll have some time available for question and answer towards the end of the presentation. For those of you who are on your laptop or electronic device, computer device, iPad of some sort, or are using the Zoom app on your phone, you should be able to find a Q&A feature located at the bottom of your screen. If you activate that Q&A feature, you'll be able to type in a question. So you will be able to put questions in throughout the course of the presentation, and we will answer those towards the end of the presentation during the Q&A and the discussion time. Additionally, for those of you who are on the phone and not logged into the Zoom app, we can also make time available to assist you with your questions. So you'll be able to raise your hand using your phone. I'll tell you how to do that when we get to that point. Folks, for those of you who are in the meeting, you can raise hands now or at the end, but we will not be pausing for Q&A until we get to the end of the presentation. So if your hand is up, you can feel free to lower it until later in the presentation. A couple things going on with the cannabis program. So I just want to make a quick reminder that in addition to having the equity grants available currently, folks can apply for eligibility, and we'll talk about that. You can also, if you have been certified eligible, you can apply for a grant currently. There's 3 options, and we'll go through that today. But I also just want to make sure folks who are applicants with the cannabis program, that applicants are aware that we have the portal open for reapplication, and encourage everyone to visit the website, the county's website, to review the portal information and see if you have an application status deemed portal. So just a reminder there, the portal opened on August 2nd and will close on September 30th. Okay, Paula, may we go to the next slide, please? All right, so a little about the LEAP program, which really is why we're here today. So as many of you know, Mendocino County launched the Local Equity Entrepreneur Program over the last probably 18 months or so. And currently and ongoing for a while still, LEAP individuals can apply for grants and services. The first thing they must do is apply for eligibility. So applicants can submit an application by visiting the www.elevateimpactmendo.com website. You'll find a slew of information there, so please do check out the elevateimpactmendo.com website. And then also, there's 2 primary applications available. Eligibility applications, which you need to fill out first and be deemed eligible before you can apply for a grant application. Let's go to the next slide, please. So just a little background about how we got the LEAP program kicked off. In 2020, Mendocino County was awarded $2.2 million from the Cannabis Equity Grants Program for local jurisdictions, which is being administered by the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, kind of fondly known as GoBiz for short. In addition, the county's Board of Supervisors allocated $100,000 in matching funds to the grant to support local cannabis equity entrepreneurs, which aims to provide funding and services for those hardest hit and most impacted by the war on drugs, by lowering barriers to cannabis permitting and licensing. In 2021-2022 fiscal year, GoBiz allocated an additional $832,000 to the county for the purposes of the equity grant funding program. In order to receive a LEAP designation or to be what we call certified as an equity eligible applicant, folks should and must demonstrate eligibility by completing the LEAP application. Again, LEAP applications and additional information can be found on the website, elevateimpactmendo.com. All right, let's go on to the next slide and I'll mute and pass it back to you, Paula.
Thank you so much, Kristen. We are so excited about today's webinar because we've made several updates to the program, which was approved by the Board of Supervisors at the last meeting. I think it'll make the application process much easier, simpler, and you get access to more funding. So what can be bad about those things, right? But we'll talk to you about that in detail as we go through the presentation. This slide, the intention of this slide is to really let you know that we are a force and a team here to support you in getting this funding, right? On the call with me today are Bruce Robinson, Tiffany McBride, Jovan Johnson, Chelsea Candelaria, and Stacy Brennan. This is the team of underwriters that will help you with your application process. The one thing, we have a saying at Elevate Impact, don't let perfect be the enemy of good enough. We want you to apply to get the funding. And if you have any questions about the application, this team of underwriters can answer any of those questions for you. And our goal is to make this application process as simple and as fast as possible. Stacy is our customer relations manager. She unfortunately had some family issues today and was not able to attend the webinar, but most likely you will hear a lot from her because she really is the facilitator to make sure that all of the application materials are uploaded. And if you have direct questions, she is our customer relations manager and will be there to support you as well. So first, we want to talk to you about how to get eligible, how to receive that LEAP eligibility. So there are 3 designations. There's the LEAP licensee, and this is somebody who currently holds a cannabis cultivation permit or a cannabis facilities license. Then there's the LEAP applicant. That's somebody who has applied but has not yet received their cultivation permit or their cannabis facility license, but you have the documentation which shows that you're in the queue. And then the third category is a LEAP business information. That's somebody who's not yet applied or has not yet received a permit or a business facilities license. You can still apply to our program and you can receive technical assistance. You can't receive grant funding and you cannot receive fee waiver funding, but you can receive technical assistance. And the reason that's important because it at least starts you on the process so that when you do receive your designation as an applicant and licensee, it'll make it faster for you down the road. So first, we're going to talk about the different criteria associated with becoming LEAP certified. Now I'd like to turn it over to Bruce Robinson, who will talk to you about the location criteria.
Thank you, Paula. Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to talk about who's actually eligible to apply for the LEAP program. And just to be clear, even though we all live in the county of Mendocino, it's for those folks who live outside of the cities of Ukiah, Fort Bragg, Willits, or Point Arena. These cities have their own cannabis programs, and if you live or plan to operate in your business within the city limits of these 4 cities, then you will not be eligible for the LEAP program. If you intend to have your business outside of the city limits, then you would be eligible. And so I think that covers that on the location. Paula, can you go to the next slide, please?
Sure.
So as far as the documentation Paula talked about, the option one is for those of you who have already received a current cannabis cultivation or cannabis facilities business license, you will be submitting that document to us to confirm your status. Under option two, you may have submitted an application but not yet received approval from the county. Even if that's 1, 2, or 3 years in the past, that's still valid and eligible for the LEAP program. For those of you for option three who want to do a business information, you just need to show that you plan to operate a business within the county limits.
Great. Thank you, Bruce. The second criteria out of three, so there's three criteria total: jurisdiction, equity, and income. The second criteria is the equity criteria. And Tiffany, if you could walk people through the equity criteria, that would be great.
Sure, thanks, Paula. So the first criteria is a camp raid, and a camp raid criteria requirements are met if you have lived within a 5-mile radius of the location of raids conducted by the Campaign Against Marijuana Planting program. The second equity criteria is a cannabis arrest. And this criteria is met if you've had a parent, sibling, or child who was arrested for or convicted of the sale, possession, use, manufacture, or cultivation of cannabis, including as a juvenile. The third requirement, or the third equity criteria that you can meet, is the cannabis industry participant. And the requirement for this is someone who, one, holds or has applied for a for a Mendocino County cannabis permit /CFBL, or works/has worked in the cannabis industry and was arrested for a non-violent cannabis-related offense, or was subject to a cannabis-related asset forfeiture. Fourth, a cannabis industry survivor. And this requirement is a person who has experienced sexual assault, exploitation, domestic violence, and or human trafficking while participating in the cannabis industry. And last is the cannabis-related homelessness. And this requirement is having been homeless or suffered a loss of housing as a result of cannabis enforcement.
Great, thank you.
And the cannabis requirement documentation. So how do you go about proving and showing documentation for the qualifications? So there's a couple ways that you can show that. First of which is a public record. You can submit a newspaper article, arrest records, and a sworn statement from a neighbor. Next, you can use a public record, such as arrest records, sheriff logs, etc. Third, you can use permits, an employer verification, and forfeiture records. Fourth, you can use a personal statement from a crisis center, counselor, friend, or family member. And last, court records, eviction notices, statements from friends or family members are also acceptable.
Perfect, thank you.
And with regards to the income criteria, so we're going to take a look at your income and make sure you fit the household income requirement defined as moderate for Mendocino County, as verified by adjusted gross income from your most recently filed required federal income tax return. Your most recently filed tax return, everyone must submit a tax return regardless of your income or whether or not you have been previously required to file. You must also supply a secondary source of income, which must also be, we'll be verifying your income through a secondary source. Next.
And before we go to the next slide, I really want to just emphasize that this was one of the changes that was approved by the Board of Supervisors. We raised the income criteria from extremely low and low to moderate, which basically doubled the income that people can have and still be eligible. And we're hoping that this will encourage more participants in the program.
Right. And Paula, so applicants and participants, if you checked out the income before and said, hey, you know what, I make too much, please take a second and third look and see if your income for 2020 now falls within one of these categories, because if you made too much then, you might meet the criteria now. So go ahead and get your applications in. And this is a chart of the income qualifications based on household size. And again, this is moderate income. Again, take a look, see if you qualify, and get your applications in as soon as possible, because we know that more people will qualify.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tiffany.
And how do you verify your income? So as we just discussed, you're going to turn in your most recently filed, federally filed income tax return, which is 2020. Will also require a secondary proof of income, which can be one of the following: a secondary or a consecutive year tax return. So since 2020 is required, you can turn in a 2019 tax return. You can also submit 2 months of pay stubs, a current profit and loss statement, and a balance sheet, or a current proof of eligibility of any of the following: general assistance, food stamps / CalFresh, Medi-Cal and CalWorks, or supplemental Social Security or social income and Social Security disability income. Those statements also qualify.
Perfect, thank you. So now I'm going to walk you through the grant application process and what the grant opportunity is. So another change that we're super happy about from the Board of Supervisors is we raised the direct grant amount from $10,000 to $50,000. So you can now apply for grants to help with capital improvement, fixtures and compliance, and hiring of workforce development, and a diverse workforce rather. And these grants will be dispersed in two $25,000 tranches. There's also a fee waiver grant, which you can apply for different fee waivers, and the application does ask which fee waiver you're applying for, but you can get up to $7,000 in fee waiver grants. And then finally, we have the technical assistance grant, which we'll talk about in a little more detail in just a minute. The fee waiver grant, in particular, the fee waiver grant can be applied for cannabis-related permits and licenses, and you can also apply to waive the fee associated with the pre-application meeting for cannabis-related permits. The direct grants can also be used for the purpose of employment skill training for eligible equity participants employed by or seeking employment in the licensed cannabis operations in Mendocino County. With respect to the direct grants, again, you can get up to $50,000, which will be dispersed in two $25,000 tranches. And the purpose of the direct grant is to help people meet regulatory compliance that mitigate adverse environmental effects of cannabis cultivation, including water storage, remediation and relocation of cannabis facilities located within the stream-side setbacks required by state or local regulation, installation of solar electrical systems to replace diesel or gasoline generated power for off-grid cannabis facilities where connecting to the grid is economically infeasible, and also road remediation, watershed mitigation, culverts, or infrastructure needed to meet state and local regulations. These are some of the categories. All of the categories that you can use for direct grants assistance are detailed on our website, but we wanted to give you a sense of the types of uses of proceeds that you can use the grant money for. With respect to direct technical assistance direct technical assistance grants, you can use the funding for one-on-one consulting and group training to help provide equity applicants and licensees the technical knowledge and expertise to operate a regulated cannabis business. There's small business support services, which includes training and education regarding state cannabis licensing, regulatory requirements, financial management, and business resilience. We also have small business development assistance, including business planning, grant and loan application preparation, human resource management, capital procurement services, bookkeeping, accounting practices, and systems, and so on. And then we are also exploring launching a Cannabis Cooperation Association seminar, which allows people to understand the legal regulations pursuant to Business and Professions Code sections 2620 and 26231.2. And we also are going to try to provide information regarding how to set up a cannabis cooperatives. If we have enough people who are interested in this topic, we definitely can arrange a webinar and a seminar to go through that process. Pardon me. Now I'd like to talk to you about the grant application process and the steps associated with that. So step one, you need to apply for the grant online. Paper applications will not be accepted. So you simply go to elevateimpactmendo.com to complete the online application. You can go, there's a lot of information which explains the application process. And then on the far right of the screen, you'll see the Apply Now button. You can click that button to start your application process. You will be required to answer a question as well as upload the prerequisite documents, which I'll talk about in just a minute. Step 2, all of the applications are reviewed by the Elevate Impact underwriters to ensure that the appropriate prerequisite documents have been uploaded and submitted. If your application is complete, you will receive an email saying that the application is indeed complete. If the application is not complete, the underwriter will send you an email and work with you, send you an email stating what's missing and work with you to make sure that you have uploaded the correct documents. So what types of documents are we looking for? With regards to the direct grant application, we need to have your LEAP eligibility certification letter or email. Tiffany and Bruce just talked to you about the criteria that's required to meet the eligibility, the LEAP eligibility criteria. And once that has been met, we will send you a letter which gives you a LEAP eligibility number and a letter that says that you have been verified. We're going to ask you to upload that email as a part of your grant application process. And then we would love for you to answer the question, how is the grant funding going to help your business in a minimum of 100 words? We would like for you to upload a business executive summary. And then what's very important is that you upload a budget spreadsheet, which totals to the grant amount. So if you're applying for your first $25,000, we need to see a budget that shows us how you're actually going to spend the money. And then we want you to give us a qualitative statement that explains the budget. So we just need both the numbers and the letters, if you will, both the budget as well as an explanation of the budget as a part of your application package. And then for a lot of the projects, as you can see, they're probably going to require that you work with a contractor. And if you are going to work with a contractor and spend your grant dollars on the budget that the contractor has given you, we would like for you to upload the contractor scope of work. All of the applications are going to be judged on a pass-fail basis. This is really just to make sure that there's some integrity in the process. We and some of the other cities have faced situations where people have uploaded meaningless documents or documents that weren't relevant or blank pieces of paper. And, we just want to make sure that the grant process has some integrity, and that's why we have this pass-fail scoring system. If you pass, you will receive an email saying that you did pass, and you'll get a grant approval email, which will notify you of the closing steps. And then if you don't pass the first time around, the underwriter will work with you to improve your documentation so that you can pass. And I always like to tell folks that in all the cities that we've worked in, everybody who has applied has indeed passed. We haven't denied anyone their application. All right, and then what step is this? Step 5, I believe. I can't see because of all the Zoom controls. But anyway, is the closing. So once your application has been approved, an email will be sent to the applicant saying that your grant has been approved. Then we will meet with you virtually to review the grant closing documents and sign the grant closing documents. And then we will send the completed grant documents to the County of Mendocino to receive the signatures from the County of Mendocino and authorized signatures. And then your application will be sent for payment processing, and then a check will be issued in the amount of the grant that you've applied for. And then 2 more bits of information. Once your grant has closed, there will be some follow-up requirements. The state does require that we document how entrepreneurs have used the grant funding. So you will be required to upload receipts detailing how you spent the money. And we are developing an expense app on our portal at elevateimpactfunds.com. And as soon as that's ready, we'll walk you through how to upload your receipts. And then you're also going to be required to upload your receipts before you can receive that second disbursement or before you get an additional fee waiver grant or whatever it is that you're applying for. You have to upload your receipts from the previous grant that you received so that we can track that information and provide it to the state. This is just an example of the expense portal that we're developing right now. And and you'll be able to, state which grant you have, in the system. In Mendocino, this will be grant 1 will be 25,000, grant 2 will be 25,000. And then this is the screen where you'll be able to add a new receipt or add a new expense is what we say here. And then all of these numbers will total the budget that you've outlined as a part of your grant application. But we're in the process of developing this, and we hope to launch it in the next couple of weeks. But your underwriter will work with you to use this app so that you can upload your receipts in a very efficient and effective way. And this is just a screenshot of how the receipt will be uploaded. We'll ask you to put in the date, the payee, the amount, a description of what the expense was, and then you'll be able to select an expense category. And these expense categories are consistent with what the state categories are that are going to be required when we report out to the state how entrepreneurs in Mendocino use their grant funding. And the other thing that the state is going to want information about is demographics. And so we will probably be doing this in a survey format where we'll be asking you demographic questions about your ethnicity, your gender, military service, and there's, I think, 3 or 4 more demographic questions that we'll be asking you. But this is the type of follow-up information you'll be required to provide after you've received the grant funding. And now we would love to open it up for Q&A.
All right, great. Thank you so much for that. So I imagine we'll have quite a bit of Q&A. I do have some questions that are unanswered in the chat feature. So I'll start there, and then we'll go to folks who want to ask their question somewhat in person. And then also we'll make some time to hear from folks who might have called in. So let's see, we have 2 questions open. Can applicants that co-own the same business each apply for an equity grant award?
That's an excellent question. Different cities have handled this in different ways, and we probably may need to get back to you because I would say that from a grant perspective, we don't see any reason why each person shouldn't be able to apply for the grant. And so, but if I could reserve that question to be answered at a later date, that would be very helpful. I just need to make sure I understand the constraints that the Mendocino program is under. But if I could reserve and answer that question later, that would be great. And if you want to send us an email to info@elevateimpactmendo.com, that would be great. Or you can go ahead and email to me, Paula at elevateimpactmendo.com. Yeah, go ahead, Kristen.
All right, and sorry to chime in there. So I hope folks know that they can elevate or they can email Paula as well, and that they caught Paula's email address. Paula, will you say your email address just one more time? I'm afraid I can't.
Sure, I'll put it on the screen for you.
Okay, perfect. There we go. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I do think the key to this, one of the keys to this question too, is both applicants will have to have qualified for eligibility. So both applicants would have to submit for eligibility. And then I think we'll have to, as Paula mentioned, just make sure that there's no language that we aren't aware of that restricts how funds are dispersed to folks who might be investing in the same business. So we will get back to you there. What form of payment do we receive the funds in if we were to receive funds? Folks are generally concerned that they don't have, might not have bank accounts. I being from the county, I would say that it would be very hard for us to disperse funds in any method other than a check or potentially an electronic direct deposit into a bank account. I haven't received the final word on whether or not we can direct deposit, but I do not see how it would be possible for us to have you come pick up cash from us, say. So I do think we're going to be limited to checks. I don't know, Paula, if you or anyone else on the team would like to respond to that question.
Yeah, unfortunately, in all the cities that we're managing grant programs in 4 different cities and counties at this point, and everybody disperses via a check or direct deposit. They all require bank accounts. If you are not able to open up a business bank account, we can issue checks to individuals. We had situations in Oakland where certain businesses had opened up a business account, and then the bank closed. Pardon me, they closed the account, and so we had to reissue the check to the individual. So, you can receive the check as an individual or as a business, but unfortunately, you will have to have some sort of bank account to receive the funding.
Yeah, Paula, this is Bruce. On that note, I think, we should highlight that you will be, if you're receiving the funds as an individual, that you really should consult with tax advisors as to what are the implications to your income. And you may want to look at strategically,
Yeah, it's actually broader than that, Bruce. One of the things that we forgot to say in the presentation is grants are taxable. You will be taxed whether you receive it as a business or whether you receive it as an individual. So you should probably consult with a tax advisor either way, but grants will be taxable and you will have to report it as income, whether you do it as an individual or as a business.
Just to add on to what both Paula and Bruce said, with regards to how, like in the manner that they'll be paid, during the underwriting process, when we're putting your grant applications together, you'll have the option, like Paula said, to choose to be paid as an individual or as a business. And with that, whether you choose to be paid as an individual, you'll submit the bank account of your personal bank account. If it's a business, you'll submit your business bank account, and that's where your payment will be issued. The manner in which it'll be issued, I think that's still up for determination. Actually, I have one question, and a couple of equity applicants have asked this. For the direct grants, when they're turning in the budgets, the direct grants are $50,000 now. If they are requesting an amount, can they request an amount below that if their projects come in below $50,000?
Yes, and Tiffany, remember the grants will be dispersed in 2 $25,000 tranches. So the first budget that will be submitted will total 25, and the second budget that will be submitted will total 25,000. And yes, you can apply for less than the full 25 if you so choose. But over the life of the program, the most you can receive in grant funding is 50,000.
Got it. Perfect. Thanks for clarification.
Right. And one strategy may be your first tranche, if you apply for the total of 50, can take place this fall in 2021. And then after you you receive the grant and you pay for the project and submit the receipts, then you could submit those in calendar 2022 or the first or second week of January, and then receive your second payment in January. That might help in spreading out the income over 2 different calendar years.
Right. And is there a deadline to receive the full 50? If, say, for example,
good question.
Yes, the deadline for disbursement, we have to report by February 28th. The funds have to be spent, so the grant needs to be dispersed by most likely February 15th so that we can collect all of the data that the state needs and report out on the information to the state. So the final disbursement date would have to be February 15th.
Great. So they have to get their applications in, get the first disbursement or the first couple disbursements of up to 25, and then the second disbursements totaling 25 by February.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thanks for the clarification.
All right.
So there was a question, I think, that asked about what if funds are left over. So this might be a good time to address that. That's a very good question.
They go back to the state.
Yeah.
They have to be given back to the state. So if we don't disperse all of the grant funding by the required deadline of February 28th, we're required to give the funds back to the state. So we don't want to find ourselves in that situation. So please, please, please apply.
Okay, great. So I know that there was a secondary question that it looks like someone answered via typing. So the question disappears, just so you all know. I don't get to see those questions anymore if you answer them as a panelist. But in reference to the question about how funds would be dispersed, would it be a check or whatnot? The second part of that question was, and I think it's relevant for folks on the call, who will the check be made out to? Will they be made out to the individual or to the individual's business? And to that question, I'll pass it over to the team. I imagine it's made out to whomever the applicant is that qualified. But
yes. So whoever, you get to decide once you receive your LEAP eligibility, you tell us whether you want the check made out to you personally or to your business. And we ask the question as a part of our closing process.
Yes, and just to back up Paula's answer, to expand upon that, when we ask you, you will submit a bank account statement showing, hey, if you want it made out to an individual, you will submit the first page of your personal bank account statement. If you want it dispersed or made out to your business, you will submit the first page of your business bank account statement. Which brings up a second question, following up on the question we had regarding bank accounts. Since most of them don't have bank accounts, or some of them don't, in requesting their first page of their bank account statement in order to issue the checks, what would we do, or what should we do, or what do they do in the event that they don't have a bank account statement because they don't have a bank account?
So you're going to be required to get a bank account. We tried this in Oakland a couple of years ago, where people took the check that was issued by the city of Oakland and tried to open a bank account with that check, and they were not allowed. So we are going to require that you have a bank account, whether it's a personal account or a business account, in order to receive this County of Mendocino check. But you cannot use this check to open an account.
Got it. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, great. Let's try to get through a couple more questions here. So I have a question specific to the fee waiver grant. So the individual asking the question is eligible equity candidate and has applied, but had to pay before the application was completed. So had to pay for the fee before they completed their application. Then was told that the county would not reimburse fees, only waive them before being paid. Why will the county not reimburse fees? Could we make it clear to applicants how to get this part of the grant? So let me just say one thing and then I'll turn it over. We don't have the ability under the state requirements to issue funds for reimbursement. So they're for projects and fees that are up and coming. We don't have the ability to reimburse applicants for fees they've already paid with the fee grant waiver program. But I'm sure Elevate Impact has more to say about that matter as well.
No, I was just going to say exactly what you said. I just want to clarify for folks that this is a state requirement. This is not a Mendocino requirement. It is a state requirement, and therefore it cannot change, and it exists across every jurisdiction throughout California. And so we cannot reimburse expenses. We can only provide funding for expenses going forward.
Okay, great. Let's go on to the next question. What type of documentation is needed to prove that you've been rated by CAMP? And I'm going to just go ahead and leave that to Elevate Impact to chime in on.
Tiffany or Bruce, what have you seen people submit as justification there?
Right. So this is a challenge given the lack of documentation that's out there. The requirement technically is that not necessarily that you were rated by CAMP, but that you live within a 5-mile radius of an aggressive police enforcement action, usually led by CAMP, but on some occasions by the local sheriff authorities. So that has usually been publicized in historical newspapers or articles that a raid occurred on a certain date, and then that you prove that you live within 5 miles of that event at the time of the raid or police enforcement action. You can do that by showing the deed of your land that you still lived on the land within 5 miles of that police activity, or that you were a renter during that period of time as well. And then a historical lease, or even a neighbor's testimony that, Mr. Jones or Mrs. Jones lived at this location, and yes, it is within a 5-mile radius of where that raid took place.
And just to expand upon Bruce's explanation, which was full, I think the easiest way, a lot of times, as many of you know, that in newspaper articles, it may give you a block, it may give you a generic, vague area where the raid was conducted. Supply whatever information you can. The fastest way that I have seen people be able to get the required documentation in when the articles are very vague in terms of where the raid occurred. It might just say a general vague area. Submit that, and in addition, submit a declaration from a neighbor saying that, yes, I lived here. Tiffany McBride lived at XYZ Main Street, and if I Google that, or a raid occurred at 555 Main Street, and I show my lease or my deed to my land, which is I can Google. It's within 5 miles of where the raid occurred. So if you have someone say, hey, a raid occurred here, you can match that with some kind of news article, which is kind of vague because that's the way they are. Then turn in that information. A lot of it is declaration. Some of the information is not easily available. So we're going to work with you to provide as much of the information we can to the best of our ability, and to make the pieces fit together and make sense.
Right. So the bottom line is submit whatever you have, and we'll work with you to get to what we need to be acceptable.
Exactly.
And I'm wondering about this question too. This is Kristen. And so, a lot of times camp raids were referenced by watershed. So they might say, flying in the Spy Rock area, for example. Camp was, active in the Spy Rock area, for example. So could the applicant provide you a map of that watershed with that statement that camp was active on such and such date in that watershed, and put a pin on the map saying, yep, this is where I lived during this verified camp activity? With that.
So what I would do in that circumstance, and that is truly what is happening in real life, right? So they're saying this happened, and they're getting a neighbor or a neighbor's declaration to attest, like, yes, on this date, there was this camp raid that happened around, and I saw the helicopters flying over my property. I live at this address, and you turn in like, hey, yes, I lived at this address, and your neighbor or your landlord, or you show a lease with the address on it that corroborates that. It might just be fitting the pieces of the puzzles together through an article that says something about the watershed, plus a declaration from a neighbor saying the raid or the helicopter activity happened in that area, partnered with your lease or your deed.
Okay, great. So shifting gears a little bit, how long will the applicant have to prepare a grant proposal for direct funds once they've been approved to apply for the grant funding? So is there a timeline once you're eligible that you have to turn around and apply for the grant that you can share with us?
No, it's really up to you. I mean, if it were me, I would apply as fast as possible so that I can make sure that I get all of the 50,000, in time for the state deadline of February 15th. But, and if I could just flip that question a little bit, I would say that the most time-consuming part of the process often is how long it takes the applicant to prepare their application. So again, apply, don't let perfect be the enemy of good enough, and work with our underwriters to perfect your application. But don't drag your feet in applying, because we want to make sure we get this money out and not have to give it back to the state. And we can help you in all the ways that Bruce and Tiffany have already described, right? So, apply, and we'll work with you to get the application to a point where you meet all of the criteria.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So is there an anticipated review time? So once, and an eligible applicant submits a grant application, is there an anticipated amount of time that it might take for Elevate Impact to review that application?
Yeah, I would say looking at all of the different cities and jurisdictions that we work in, once we receive a completed application, and I emphasize completed, once all of the prerequisites have been uploaded, all the questions have been answered, and we're talking about the grant application also, it usually takes 4 to 6 weeks for us to get an approval through the system.
And does that approval, include that timeline, that 4 to 6 timeline, include the funds being dispersed to the applicant?
No, that's just the application approval process. So reviewing the materials with the applicant, making sure that their I's are dotted and their T's are crossed, making sure we have a complete application. And then once it's approved, we'll go through the city grant disbursement process.
All right. So we're talking about probably more like 6 to 10 weeks from filing that application, going through the review, being approved for the grant, to receiving funds all together as a timeline. And looking at that, that's a couple of months. And if we have to have funds distributed by the end of February, I believe is what Paula mentioned, people really should not hesitate. And if you have not applied for eligibility, please do so. Like, as soon as we get off this webinar, go to elevateimpactmendo.com, please, and start your eligibility application so that we can get these funds out to the community. It's really a huge priority for the county. The timelines are very tight, but please, please, please don't hesitate. I know everyone's busy as we get into harvest, but this money, I think, could be really helpful to eligible applicants, and we really want to see it get into your hands. So please, again, don't hesitate. So I'll stop there and ask the next question. Would one of the Elevate Impact team members please give us an overview of the fee waiver grant program? We've got quite a few questions coming up around it. And Paula, your presentation was amazing, but I think you talked a little fast for some folks. So if we could just get a review of the fee waiver program, that would be really helpful.
I wonder if I can just go straight to the website, and if you guys can see, let's see, new share. I'll go here. I'm gonna go share. And bear with me, I'm just going to go to the website. I've got like 5 different screens over here, people. So hang on one second. I'm just going to pull up the website on my screen, and then I'll come back on video. Okay. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
All right. So if you go to the website, Elevate Impact Mendo, can you see that? Can you see the website?
Yes.
Perfect. Yes. So if you go to grants, you can click on LEAP permit / fee waiver grant. And here it gives you the overview. And LEAP designees can apply for a fee waiver grant for cannabis related county permits and licenses. And it literally talks you through the detail about what you can apply for. And the fee amounts, which are subject to change, if you click this green button here, it lists all of the different fee waivers that you can apply for with this money. And what we need to do is make sure that this is the most recent information, because it does change. I think this schedule was effective through June of 2021. So that was one of the things I had flagged, that we need to make sure we get the updated information. But these are all of the different fee waivers that you can apply for. And I will make sure this chart gets updated.
Yeah, and just to talk about that update a moment, because I think it will be helpful. We did pass a new fee schedule, so some of the fees are going down. For instance, applicants' issuance fee will be going down slightly. So needless to say, those new fees will be available after August 15th, I believe. So they'll be coming up soon, but they haven't implemented yet. So once that occurs, we will update that chart.
Perfect. And then there's another chart on here that talks about the fee waiver funding categories. So if you click on this menu, button, you can see the list of all of the different fee waiver grants. It's just another way of presenting the information. So these are all the different types of fees that you can apply for. And again, all of this is found on our website at elevateimpactmendo.com. And then let me just see what else we have on here with regards to, if you're wondering what sort of documents you have to upload for the fee waiver grant, you have to upload your LEAP designation email. We would like to see an email, a fee estimate or a letter or memo from the designated county department providing, we need to make sure that you are eligible for the fee that you're applying for, right? And so that's the point of bullet point number 2, but we'll work with you as underwriters to make sure we get the right documentation for you, because we don't want you to get a fee waiver grant and then you're not eligible for the fee, right? So we want to make sure that that's in place. And then as far as the application questions, we want to know what type of fee waiver you're applying for, what is the amount of the fee waiver, and do you meet the qualifications? And then we really want to know, how will this fee waiver, assist in your business operations? And we're asking you to submit a response between 100 and 500 words. So the point of me really going to this website, if you can't remember all that or couldn't write stuff down fast enough, please go to our website. Everything is here. If you can't find the page that you're looking for, send us a question and we'll help you navigate the website. And while I'm here, it might be helpful to just say that the same is true for direct grants. We have our overview page, which explains, the overview of what the direct grants can be used for. Here on the second menu item is the direct grant categories that you can apply for. And we try to list out in detail sample projects that you can use the money for: regulatory compliance sample projects, capital improvement sample projects, fixtures or equipment sample projects, and then training and retention of equity verified workforce sample projects, right? So all of this is indeed on our website. And then the required documents that you have to upload as a part of the direct grant process, that's all listed here as well. The eligibility certification letter with your LEAP eligibility number, the business executive summary, the budget spreadsheet, the written budget narrative, and the contractor scope of work that you are applying for. And we also kind of want to know which of those categories that was on the previous page that you're applying for. That'll just help us, be able to process your application more quickly. And again, we just want you to answer the question, how will the grant funding be helpful to your business? And then the explanation of the fact that one of the things we talked about earlier in the presentation, but is also on our website, is, that the grant application will be scored on a pass-fail basis. And if you fail, you will have the opportunity to reapply. And finally, there's the technical assistance grant. We have the grant overview, which explains, what the technical assistance grant is and how we are defining technical assistance. And then if you're wondering, if you're looking for a little bit more detail, you can go to the grant tab and then click on direct technical assistance grant, technical assistance funding categories. And on this page, you can see all of the different categories for which you can apply for a technical assistance grant. And we really want you to, kind of customize your own technical assistance program by selecting which one of these webinars you're most interested in. And then, of course, the required documents with regards to the technical assistance grant is also on our website. And, we're with technical assistance, you're only required to upload your LEAP designation email award and then answer the question, how will this requested technical assistance grant help your business? So again, all of the information is on the website and hopefully it'll be easy enough for you to navigate. But if it's not, just please let us know.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. It's a great overview and reminder. So another banking question, and it's kind of more of a statement and less of a question, but I think it does warrant some brief conversation. There are concerns that have been expressed that a check could raise flags for accounts with banks, as lots of banks have canceled checking accounts and business accounts because they realize that the account is related to a cannabis business. I do think that that is possible if you do not have a cannabis-specific bank account. I know that having a cannabis-specific bank account can be expensive, but it might be worth considering if you are looking to receive grant money. And I would encourage folks to check in with their local credit union or locality credit union about cannabis-specific banking. As I mentioned, it is a little more expensive, definitely, but rest assured, they aren't going to shut you down for putting checks into your bank account in relationship to your cannabis business, or from receiving payments, say from a distributor for your cannabis materials. So that is one option, and I just wanted to put it out there before we go to the next question.
Yeah, and can I just speak to that also? Yeah. So some of the techniques that I've seen folks use in other cities is their registered business name is different than their DBA name, right? So let's say you set up a business account, which is sort of a standard sort of innocuous business name like Paula Grove's, business, I can't think of an innocuous name for some reason off the top of my head, but, Paula Grove's business account, but my DBA might be, cannabis candies. But, the name that you use on your bank account should be your registered business name, the name that's registered with the Secretary of State, but not your DBA name. Your DBA name is a little more brand oriented, but the account should be opened in the name that in your registered business name account that you've registered on the Secretary of State website. Does that make sense?
Yep, I think that makes a lot of sense. Okay.
And by the way, when you open a business account, let me speak for myself. When I opened my business account, they asked for my registered business name, and they asked for the documentation associated with my registered business name. They did not ask for my DBA name because they need to know that that account is registered with the Secretary of State. So that's the other reason people do it that way.
Okay, great. So another question about fees. So the attendee wants to know if the county can hold the funds that they've been awarded, right, for a fee assistant or fee waiver, and then deduct from the grant amount as the cost comes up. And that's pretty much exactly how the fee waiver program works. You identify the fees that you're going to have to be paying. And then once you're awarded the fee waiver grant, once you have come to the point of needing to pay those fees, if it's a county fee, we can do a transfer to that county department essentially for the amount of that fee. So the fee waiver program isn't a check to the applicant necessarily. It's generally an internal ledger process that the county manages after the eligible applicant has been approved for a fee waiver. Paula or Bruce or any of the Elevate team, do you want to add to that or potentially correct any of that?
The only question that I would love the opportunity to do a little bit more research around, Kristen, is I think what you're saying is the cash isn't going to come directly to the applicant because it'll be an internal journal entry between two departments at Mendocino County, which is fantastic. But I just want to make sure that we get clear on what the tax implications of that are, right? And will the tax implication accrue to the recipient of the fee waiver or not? And I just don't know the answer to that. I have calls to a number of different people to try to get that answered, but that's the one thing that I just cannot speak to right now.
Well, and I just to add to that too, I don't know that it's really our place as Elevate Impact or the county to advise folks on how to manage their taxes. So I think with any of these grants, even a fee waiver, you're going to want to talk to your accountant about the fact that you were awarded a grant to cover the cost of that expense. So you should be showing that expense, I would assume, in your bookkeeping records for your business or your personal endeavors, however you have that accounting occurring for you as an applicant. And then also show that the county awarded you funding to cover that expense. So I just don't want to get us into a position where we're answering any sort of tax questions. That's definitely
right. That's fair.
I do want to respond to a question about an applicant asked, or a potential applicant asked, what happens if they haven't applied for their cultivation license yet? How will they know how much that cultivation license might cost? And I think that that's a really fair question, and it's quite nebulous, but I will say this. So currently we're operating under 10A17. So there is a fee schedule specific to 10A17. It is possible that we will end up having our next application process be under 10A17. So then you would look at those fees. But then it is also possible that down the road, we may see the implementation of the new ordinance 22.18, which would have a different fee schedule. So I would suggest, if you have been deemed eligible and you're looking to apply for a fee waiver down the road, that you would just identify the fee associated with 10A17, as well as any fees that may be associated with 22.18, and build them into your proposal so that we know when you do apply, right, you're applying for a fee waiver for whatever program it is that we can accept you into for permitting in the cannabis program. So a little wonky and a little challenging right now because there's a referendum that has been filed against the new ordinance. And also, I think finishing up your eligibility application, if you haven't done so yet, is the great first step. It is hopeful that closer to the end of September, we'll have a clearer image of what that path forward will look like. So those are my suggestions currently. I don't know if the Elevate Impact team wants to add to that, but I do know there's some shifting happening here and not necessarily a clear path forward.
And we will obviously communicate things as we get clear. This is a little bit of a fluid programs. You know, I really applaud the state of California for really trying to get, you know, funding into the hands of social equity entrepreneurs. But this is the first, you know, type of program in the nation. So we're going to try to be as flexible as we can and make changes and communicate those changes to make it easier for people to apply.
Okay, great. So I have another question here, and this is really in the eligibility. It's an eligibility question. So we have an attendee who was part of a farm and believes that they qualify under the human trafficking component for disproportionately impacted. So they have documents as far as texts and letters back and forth and receipts for things that they bought because at the time they were looking into a lawsuit. So how would that be proof that they could provide to show that they were human trafficked because they were never paid for their work or their hours while at that farm? And instead of all of the docs they prepared for court, could a friend just provide an affidavit, or would they need to provide both to show a human trafficking situation?
No, I think that they should, you know, we're trying to make this as simple and as easy and accessible as possible. So just provide the affidavit to the underwriter. If they need more information, they will request it of you. But I think that would probably be fine.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. A kind of not-for-profit organization received the grant funds on behalf of a group of applicants. And this question came up earlier, and I don't know that it got answered, so my apologies. Could that nonprofit organization be, say, a co-op? So could a cooperative of eligible applicants receive the funds, or a nonprofit on behalf of eligible applicants? And I'm going to pass this over to you, Paula, because I and the Elevate team, I'm so sorry. I don't know if you have experience with this from other jurisdictions.
Yeah, we have. I don't know the answer to that question, because here's the thing. Well, I don't know the answer to that because the co-op would not be LEAP eligible, right? The co-op cannot receive LEAP eligible status. Now, if I really would have, let me just say off the top, I don't know the answer, need to research. But what occurs to me is we give LEAP, the people who receive the funding have to be LEAP eligible. And businesses can be LEAP eligible if they are owned by LEAP eligible individuals. So if you were to set up a co-op, I think all of the co-op members would each have to be LEAP eligible or LEAP verified. And then the question is, if we provided the funding to the LEAP co-op where every co-op participant is LEAP eligible, does that meet the criteria? And quite frankly, I would have to go, or I would work with Kristen to go to the state to help answer that question. I don't know, Bruce, did you have some thoughts about that?
No, I think you addressed it. I mean, yeah, that's a tough one, just because of we have to give the funds to a LEAP applicant, either through their business, but or LEAP eligible applicant. Co-op could be an interesting angle. That's very technical, right?
Yeah, please shoot me an email, Paula at elevateimpactmendo.com, and I can certainly research the question. I don't have the answer today.
Okay, excellent. So what happens if an eligible applicant, right, is in the application process with the county, they're awarded a grant, and then they're denied a permit? What happens then? Well,
I think it depends on what the budget use of proceeds are, right? So it depends on how you plan to spend the money. If you create a budget that is going to only be used for a permitted business, that is one scenario. But if you have a use of proceeds on your budget that can be used, that can be spent prior to you getting the permit, that's a different scenario. So we would have to look at the budget use of proceeds to figure out what the risk is. But it's an excellent question, because and maybe it becomes an issue of timing. If your goal is to use the money for a permitted business, then maybe we need to think about when the grant actually gets dispersed, or maybe we need to see if there's a way to get visibility into, the probability that you are or are not going to get a permit. But that's an excellent question. I think we'd have to take that on a case-by-case basis and look at your budget use of proceeds to make sure that it's something that that is doable for you in the event that you are denied.
Yeah, and I think, just thinking about this question a little more, the attendee who asked the question asked specifically about the portal. So, the portal process, I just want to make sure that everyone is really clear that what we're looking for in the portal is a complete application. So when you submit your application through the portal, if it's incomplete, we'll be sending you a checklist showing you what's deficient, and then giving you some information about that deficiency. So we don't just, for example, mark the application deficient. We're going to say, we'll give you a deficiency, a big X on that category, and then we'll give you some code words like answer the erosion questions at the top of page 5, or you skipped the security section, or the APN is wrong, or you didn't fill in a different section, right? Or you forgot to sign it. So hopefully when we're looking at this next round of folks who are working on deficiencies, we go all the way up to 100% complete rate with that second round of deficiency or application submittal reviews. Once someone is determined to have a complete application in the portal, it'll be assigned to a planner for full review. Now, almost everyone under 10A17 with embossed receipts has shown that they previously were cultivating. So you could be an applicant with expenses related to compliance for your lake and streambed alteration agreement or your general order agricultural discharge program, perhaps. And if you spent the money, so say you wrote a grant to do the upgrades to your culverts that are required by your lake and streambed alteration agreement, and you did those upgrades over the course of running the gamut of the application process, right? But then something occurred, like maybe you disqualified yourself because you cut down a bunch of trees around your cultivation site, and then you ended up being denied a permit. That would be unfortunate, but the county's not going to come back after the money you spent to do those environmental upgrades that were required for you to be an applicant. So I hope that that helps to answer the question a little bit broader too, or provide a little context to it. So let's move on to the next question. We still have a little time here and we've got a few questions in the queue. So could Elevate Impact Mendo use any of the admin fees that when the state issues grant funding to the local jurisdictions, 10% of those fees can be used for administrative support? So is there money left in that budget to hire a CPA/tax attorney who can provide direct support to the applicants? Looking at that budget really has been allocated, that 10% admin budget has been allocated to having the staff, including the team at Elevate Impact, be available to help the county administer and implement this program. So there's not a lot or any potentially money left in that 10% administrative cost pool to start paying for additional services for applicants. And hiring a CPA or a tax attorney would be us, I would imagine, having to revamp the scope of the equity grant program itself to provide that as an additional technical assistance or service program that folks could apply for. I don't know if Elevate Impact wants to add to that response.
I really cannot emphasize how important it is for us to help you guys complete your applications and get access, and get the funding. And, as I think through the timetables that we've already talked about and the fact that all of the applications have to be fully finished by February 1st, there's a lot of work to do. And I think we're a little bit behind because of all the program changes, which obviously work to the benefit of the applicants. And so I really want to make sure that we're spending our time helping applicants apply and get funded. And so if it turns out that we have some excess room later on, maybe it's something that we consider, but I really want to make sure that the applicants are getting their application questions answered, getting their applications processed, and we're getting money out the door. And I think that should be our highest priority.
Thank you for that. So another question about the fee waivers. Could the fee waivers include building permit fees such as like permitting costs associated with making sure that your greenhouse or hoop house that you're cultivating in has its ag exempt or building permit paid for or covered in the fee waivers? As that is a fee from planning and building, but specific to, and I don't see it, cannabis-related building permit fees. So, yep, it is right on there, and I would say that's definitely a yes. I would think that electrical permits and other PBS permits, planning and building service permits, that are for structures directly used for cannabis cultivation could also be covered. Well permits are on here. I would imagine if you are required to, or it's in your lake and streambed alteration agreement, perhaps, to build a pond so that you have adequate water storage, so you're off of surface water, for example, that a pond permit might also be able to be part of the fee waiver as another example.
And if I could just, sound like a broken record, but apply. We're going to go through your budgets with a fine-tooth comb. And if you have any questions about it, just apply and we'll help you answer the question, right? Don't apply because it's not clear. Apply and we'll work with you to get clarity and get the answer.
Right. So just to reiterate that, this is not an exam, right? This is not a test or the driver's your DMV test, where if you turn left on red and you fail the exam right on the spot. It's an iterative process. Please submit your application. We'll work with you to get you in compliance of the program. But Paul is right. You just need to get your application in so we can start the dialogue to help you fit into the parameters of the program. It is not a pass-fail exam. So don't hesitate trying to say, this isn't perfect, I don't have the exact number. Get something in and let's have a dialogue to see what fits the program.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bruce.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I just want to say we're at 4:51. 4:52, so we've got a few minutes left, and there's a couple more questions we can go through. A few of them do relate to the portal, and some of them are repeat. So I think if folks wanted to ask their question in person, they could raise their hand, or if they are calling in, they could raise their hand from their phone by using the *9 feature to do so. I am going to go ahead and I have 2 hands raised in the waiting room right now. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to unmute Anne. Anne, I'm going to lower your hand, and then I'm going to, I just lost you. There you are. And then I'm going to allow you to talk. So you should be unmuted. You may need to unmute your device, and you can ask your question if you have one. Anne, are you there and do you want to ask a question? I see that your device is muted at the time. So you can unmute it on the lower left-hand side of your screen, or use the *6 feature to unmute.
I already asked my question. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Okay, we have another hand raised from Michael Katz. Michael, I have unmuted you, and you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Great, thanks so much, and thanks everyone for putting on this webinar. On the equity criteria slide, it indicated that as far as these multiple options here, I imagine each one of them could be itself a criteria, and that they're not all required collectively, all of them. And so my question is, I see under cannabis industry participant that it says one who holds/has applied for a Mendocino County cannabis permit. And so my question is the criteria for this program such that literally anyone in the existing cannabis program under this description would be eligible for this grant program?
No, that's the designation, right? So I think you're referring to this section here as a part of the presentation, and I apologize if that was confusing.
Oh, no, sorry, page 11 of the slides.
Okay, now you're really testing my skills here. Let me see what I can do. Can you see that?
Uh-huh.
Excellent. All right. So I'm on page 11. Go ahead. What was your question?
The third bullet point down, cannabis industry participant.
Right. So you have to meet, let me back up. You have to meet 3 criteria. You have to meet, in order to, this is what I was going to say. Let me back up. In order to receive LEAP designation that you are eligible to receive grant funds, you'll receive a designation in one of these 3 buckets. Either you have a license, you've applied for a license, you don't have a license, but you're interested in applying. So those are the three designations that you receive, that you can receive, one of the three. In order to get a designation, you have to meet three criteria. One is location, two is equity, and three is income. So if you already hold a license and you meet the location criteria, the equity criteria, and the income criteria, you will then receive the LEAP designation known as LEAP licensee. If you meet those three criteria, and you have to meet all three, if you meet those criteria and you've only applied but have not yet received a permit or license, you will receive the designation LEAP applicant. So that means you're waiting for your permit or you're waiting for your license, but you've actually already applied. And then if you have not applied for a permit or license yet, you would have to meet those three criteria in order to receive the designation known as business information. Does that answer your question?
Well, I guess I would just have to go reread some of this stuff to determine it, because if it says in that criteria section, I just want to determine how broad it is, basically. And reading this, it seemed broader than I had previously thought. And so that was where the question came from.
And that's a fair point. I don't want to step over that. But remember, even if you meet this one equity criteria that says you have a permit in the industry, you still have to make sure that you meet the location criteria and the income criteria. It's not just that, right? So you have to meet all three. It's not just the one.
Yes. And so just looking at the location criteria, which seems to be for unincorporated Mendocino, that's pretty broad. So that's the only location criteria seems to be that it's an unincorporated Mendocino, right?
Correct.
Right, Bruce? Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
And so if that's correct, and then the income criteria is the other one, right? So as long as
correct, you're under the threshold.
Okay, so essentially anyone under the income threshold who is in the current program in unincorporated Mendocino would be eligible for this program.
No, not necessarily, because you also have to meet the equity criteria of showing that you were disproportionately impacted. There is that requirement. So it might not be clear on the equity criteria slide, but you do have to meet both the income criteria and the disproportionately impacted requirements. You have to show the disproportionately impacted component.
So it's not just that you hold the cannabis permit, but you have to have also, under this mandate, been arrested for a nonviolent cannabis offense or was subject to cannabis-related asset forfeiture.
So this isn't an or, this is an and.
No. Yes. It's an equity program, and you have to fit one of the 5 categories of the equity criteria. In addition to living inside the unincorporated areas of the county, in addition to having a moderate income.
So, Michael, I think really what should have happened is that the cannabis industry participant should probably not be on the equity criteria slide, because you're going to have to show, regardless, that you're a participant. You're either in business formation, you're an applicant, or you're a permit holder, right? That is in of itself part of the criteria determination, right? You have to, right? Because you have to meet this designation criteria. You have to fit in with one of these designated components. And then you have to show the income threshold that you meet, or you're below the income threshold that was set, the moderate income threshold. And then you, third of all, have to show the disproportionate impacts.
Got it. Yeah, thanks for that clarification. And I think that component in that area was just what had confused me.
Yeah. Any other questions for you, Michael?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to go ahead and mute you and lower your hand. Okay, I don't see any other hands raised. It does look like we might have had.
Paula, I just want to make sure we remind people about next as well, in case.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that, because we are at 5. So let's go ahead and announce our next workshop, and then I think we can go ahead and wrap things up.
Go ahead, Bruce.
Yeah, I just want to remind everyone that we will be doing a repeat of this workshop at the same time a week from now. So if your questions were not answered today, you're welcome to attend that workshop as well. And also, please tell your friends and neighbors that this program exists and that they should sit in on the next workshop to see if they're eligible or if that the program meets their needs.
Okay, great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. It was really great having such a nice turnout for the workshop. I want to thank the Elevate Impact Mendocino team for all of your hard work and support, and the County of Mendocino's technical assistance staff who helped make this available on YouTube for folks to look back on. So any closing comments from the Elevate team before we close the workshop?
Yep. Apply, apply, apply. And we will work with you to make your application successful.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and close the workshop now.
Thank you,
Kristen, everyone.
Have a great day.
Thank you.